And for anyone listening who's like, what? Like, literally, like, every single sense you have is not reality. Like, it is a filtered version of some aspects of reality. But it's a sensor at the end of the day, and sensors have their limitations, you know?
And the way that we use our mind in a conscious way, or unconscious ways for some, is we just simulate all these outcomes, right?
Right.
You are now listening to the Creative Juice podcast, brought to you by Entrepreneur.io.
Welcome back, Indies, to Creative Juice. I'm very excited, super excited, because I have one of my favorite people here, DiViNCi. Everyone give a round of applause, DiViNCi, Soliloquists of Sound. What are your other accolades? Because I don't know, like, everyone's got that one where it's like, yeah, of course you threw that out first.
Well, Soliloquists of Sound, Miss Lauryn Hill.
Miss Lauryn Hill.
Yeah. I mean, I've worked on projects with MF Doom, Cool Keith.
That's so tight. This is my
Sage
childhood
Francis.
dream. Yeah, and also, but you do brand partnerships with some of every musician's favorite brands.
Yeah, that too. It's you know, it's hard to nail down all the slash this slash that, but you know, like
Yeah. Well, we'll get to the slashes in a second. I'm just trying to line up why should people listen to you? Well, Ableton, you know, sometimes flies you out to do stuff.
Yeah, definitely. I was
The other day we're in the office and Kenny's playing around with the push and he notices the push. He's like, "Oh, is that the push?" And he's like, "Yeah, you seen one of these before?" And he's like, "Yeah, before it came out."
10 months before it came out. Yeah. That's one thing. I've kind of been involved in a scene that didn't exist. You could call it finger drumming, controllerism, you know, this kind of like more active producer that exists today. The more the spotlight's more on the producer type as a musician or a performer.
And I'll throw up a clip of what that looks like right now. For anyone listening on the podcast, you'll hear the audio, but you won't see the video. But like, whenever producers come to me and they're like, "How do I make a video ad?" I'm a producer. I'm like, just perform your production. Like, break it down to its component parts, build those live. And it seems foreign to a lot of people, but it's something that you've helped champion.
Yeah, I think I could humbly say that, accurately say that I'm a pioneer in the performing producer arena. I
mean, I haven't seen people playing multiple MPCs, you know, years and years ago, but I don't think there are any either. You know, like they're not many.
I mean, nowadays there are.
Oh, totally. Yeah.
But back then, no, there was just a handful of us.
Yeah,
for sure.
And you've been on this podcast before. You were on several episodes in the first 20 episodes of this podcast.
Yeah, it might have been one of your first.
Yeah, and it's been too long. It's been like 2 years. But I just need I need a dose of DiViNCi every once in a while, dude. Because you know, you're like you come in with a lot of. It's not. I wouldn't say energy. It's not like you're an amped up guy. But just every time I talk to you, my mind is blown a little bit, you know? And so thank you so much for joining us here.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
With being part of that kind of pioneering movement in the performing producer arena, and just being interested in innovation in product as well as creativity for so long, I was, you know, one of the first to be involved with Akai.
Right.
I helped develop some features and things for MPCs, and now with Ableton, and I deal with a lot of different companies that I believe in, and I think that they're making cool stuff.
Yeah. And it's just cool. Like, if you go to Akai's website, I don't know if it's still on there, but it probably is. But at a time, like, Akai was like, "Oh, this is one of our producers." You know?
Yeah. That was a thing.
That's so cool, man.
I appreciate you having me here. It's long overdue.
Yeah.
And I need a dose myself.
All right. Well, I guess, like, normally we have like these days we have like a subject about music marketing, or we're interviewing a certain person about their specialty. But with you, I just kind of wanted to get into some cool discussions, which is what happened. You were here a few days ago. We did that. And that's when the best stuff comes out.
Yeah, just let the subjects find us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But for anyone listening, and for me, because I want to know, first of all, because you were a part of this group, Soliloquists of Sound, Orlando legends, like everyone in Orlando knows you guys, and a lot of the hip hop community looks up to you. And you, first of all, that journey is very interesting. I got to have Swanberger talk about it at one point as well. But also, I don't know how you ended up knowing Lauryn Hill. And that's super interesting to me as a kid who, like, me and my brother had Lauryn Hill's, like, the Miseducation, like, you know?
Yeah, it's an interesting story. So just to gloss over the Soliloquists of Sound history, you know, we've been doing our thing for, we all still live together.
Yeah.
You know?
At the Solilla house, Solilla Manor.
Solilla Manor, right down the street. And regardless of our residence status, you know, like where we're staying, we're still fam. We still make music under many different names, but for about, I don't know, since about 2002, when we first formed, we've been doing it.
Yeah,
we were hometown heroes here in Orlando, have been for a while, and proud to wear that badge, because we're very thankful for what Orlando's has done for us and supported us as we kind of got signed and went international, or national, then international, and that type of thing. And at the height of us, like, doing a lot of tours out in France.
Yeah,
we were coming back from a tour. We were connecting in Philadelphia, which I'm from Pennsylvania.
Okay, I didn't know that.
We were connecting in Philadelphia and about to fly back to Orlando. And while I was walking around looking for food or something like that in the airport, I got a call from her manager, who knows me and who actually sent Soliloquist on their very first tour with Dwelle.
Okay.
Years and years prior. Called me up and was like, hey, I work with Lauryn Hill. I manage her now. And she is interested in having live program drum sounds, and you're the first guy I thought. And before you could finish that sentence, I was like, yes.
Yeah.
I just said, yes.
Yeah, where do I go now?
Yeah. He was like, well, she's in Jersey, so can you get here as soon as possible? Because in about 5 days, we're going to be in front of 60,000 people, opening up at the LA Rising Festival in the LA Coliseum.
Amazing.
That Rage Against the Machine is putting on, and Muse is going to be performing, and Miss Hill's going to be performing, and Rage Against the Machine is going to be performing. And I was like, well, I'm in Philly now. I'll just miss my flight.
Yeah.
And just head up there. So since I mentioned I lived there, I grew up there, so in Pennsylvania. So I called my parents and was like, hey, this is happening. You want to come pick me up from the airport? I'm gonna say peace to the rest of the fam.
Yeah.
And just miss that flight and go back. And Soliloquist, I told them, I was like, I think I'm gonna do it. They were like, do it. They were like, do it, go.
Yeah.
And so I had my parents drive me up to New Jersey, gotten into rehearsals, and saw how things were working there, and then thought, man, I could really bring some things to the table here.
Yeah.
And I met Miss Hill about 3 days after she had given birth to her newest child. She's got 6 kids. And she was still, going hard working. And a week to the day is when she did that performance. A week to the day that she just given birth. She was right on stage again.
Wow.
So they brought me back, and then that was 2011, July 2011, and since then been all over the world with their worn many different hats with her, became really, really good friends. I consider her one of my best friends.
It seems like you and Swam's ethos meshes really well with her ethos.
Yeah, for sure. She was already fam. And like, what was really cool is all the training that I received being part of Soliloquists really became a good base for me to work well up there too. And that's why we hit it off so well.
Yeah.
And
plus you had a whole bag of tricks like ready, you know, like
not just not just the training that I did with Soliloquist and the work, and you know, I could go on and on what we taught each other and what we've learned by creating our own bubble in this world that we've lived in for so long. But even before that, you know, all the curiosities that I had, that I followed, that I developed skills out of, all became very useful to her. And they, in fact, were very much exactly what she was looking for from a lot of different people. But simply, a lot of people weren't weird enough to go there. Yeah. Like, she'd want a sound to sound like this weird, you know, like a frog or something. I'd just be like, I know how to do that. You know, been doing that for 20 years. You know? So
that's so cool, man.
it was a great confluence of everything in my life.
Right. It's like, it's almost like you'd been training for that moment.
It was one of those things where I really felt like everything in my life prior to that point had been training for that moment. And, you know, I love her to death. I'm thankful to have still work with her, but still like also have a great friendship with her.
Hell yeah. And like Orlando's is people wouldn't know that this was happening down here. You know, like living elsewhere in the country, like seems very like a plastic action figure. Like it's Disneyland, it's Universal, it's people don't know that there's like this patchwork microcosm of musical styles. And to me, Soliloquists is a great representative example of that. Like I could show you Soliloquists and be like, all right, that, but also for blues, for soul, for all that. And people would kind of start to understand, is there, like, do you have a fondness for the Orlando music scene that's like particular? Like, you know, like, because I know you guys are a definite installment of the Orlando music scene. Like, you're a big part of it. Like, has it been inspiring to work amongst other people in this scene? Or is there another place that you kind of call your creative home?
It's tough because the patchwork that you mentioned is indicative of the patchwork-like atmosphere that this place lends itself to. Yeah. You know, we're a patchwork of people, and Soliloquist is no different. You know, you have people that none of us grew up here, and we've all come from different places. We all have different influences, different particular likes, even within the individual. Like for me, I have a lot of different things, and we just developed a way that we could express that through what we're doing. Yeah, through what we're doing, and I can't necessarily say that my style or musical or creative home is based anywhere. Right.
Because you guys were very nomadic early on.
Maybe the home is the bubble that we created. Right. You know, because it was just...
Solilla Manor is in the van. It's at the house. Yeah. It's everywhere.
Exactly. It's very much a lifestyle that we allowed ourselves to create and help to create a fortress around. Yeah. Not to guard it so much, but just by building it created its own sort of, protective bubble that we've lived in for a really long time. And that bubble, the nature of that bubble is just freedom of expression to a degree that I haven't seen other places outside of that bubble. So even in Orlando, there's influence, yes. But
I don't necessarily mean that you were like influenced by Orlando, but it just seems like Orlando complements that kind of bubble. Like just because it's like...
Because it's stigmaless.
Yeah. And also like, Eugene's at Little Indies every Wednesday, and like that guy is kind of like...
I will say that there was some particular influence on me and that was Anthony Cole.
Anthony Cole,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Totally. And everyone that comes along with him.
Yeah,
like, there's
that
a
whole thing.
Yeah.
You know, and you know, I might find that anywhere, but that's this town's version of that thing.
Yeah.
And when that thing is that brilliant musician that you cannot deny the talent and influence that they provide.
Yeah.
So
I saw a picture of Anthony Cole. He's maybe like 12 or 14 years old in front of Miles Davis.
yeah, that's what I'm saying, man. Like Sam Rivers, Anthony Cole, like all these people, they're
Special people.
special people, and it you know, I think the important thing is to be able to take the thing that existed prior to you and be able to build upon it.
Yeah.
You know, we talked about this last week where there's a certain, especially like in hip hop, for example, there's a certain trend for newer generations to not be able to build upon what prior generations have built.
Right.
And
like
that-
we got to start from square one.
Yeah, and you see the effects of that both in the bitterness of past generations
Yeah.
and the
And the tendency to make the same historical mistakes over and over.
yeah, that's the other part of it. You know, how strong would that scene be? How much even stronger would it be if there was more foundation built for you to not make the same mistakes that the pioneers had made or the predecessors had made?
Yeah.
And there's a certain level of weakening that practice does to a particular culture, and that happens not just in hip hop, it happens in a lot of different places. But it's because we've been taught to practice this skill of it either has to be fight or flight. It has to be like a wrestling match between older generations and newer generations.
One of us has to be right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When you're both right.
Yeah. So, okay. So, Soliloquists, you know, you guys went on the road. You met all of my favorite rappers ever, you know, and the underground hip hop scene, the alternative hip hop scene in the late 90s, early 2000s. You guys are very much part of that patchwork.
Early 2000s for sure.
Yeah. And then you obviously cultivated this skill, kind of a fearless creativity that I think a big part of it comes from just the way Swam is and Alex too, and all your collaborators. Like, you know, it's, you guys all seem to be of the same ilk, which is this, like, it's intense. For anyone watching this or listening, like, it's hard for me to describe in words, but whenever I talk to you guys seem to, like, know things that I should know already. Or, you know, you guys have a certain agreement about creativity that's, like, very important. It's almost like a religion of creativity with that, but it's not like, oh, you follow this rule and you do this. Like, you guys have this, like, you think about it a lot, you know?
Yeah.
And it's always been, so as soon as I saw it, I think the first time I saw it was me and Tubbsy interviewed you for Reverb Nation. And I saw you talking and I was like, damn, like, that whole crew, like, they think about music and creativity in a different way. And then certainly that prepared you and carried you over to work with Miss Hill and everything you've done since then. And now you're at a point where you get to help kind of creatives like myself who haven't really done a whole lot of thinking about, you know, the internal struggle of a creative through your company, Studio Sensei, which is, I believe, is a service to kind of help creatives with the knot that they tie in their own head, right?
Yeah, more or less. It's Studio Sensei is my creative self-development platform that I created, you know, a few years ago, and it's basically out of necessity of wanting to see a lot of these things that I've seen be beneficial, be normalized on a grander scale.
Yeah.
And necessity meaning it would be in our best interest to see these things be normalized. So, like, for example, you said that when you first experienced it, it was something that you felt like you should know already.
Yeah.
But I think that comes from the feeling of, I do know this.
Right.
Why haven't it been talked about more? Why haven't those words escaped my lips before?
Why hasn't it aided me in my time of need that I know that?
Right.
Yeah.
And that's simply because it's not a normalized idea.
Yeah.
And by a normalized idea, it's something that is practiced loudly, or at least in a way where you can see it on a regular basis.
Yeah.
I have this saying that God is a skill. And that to me means that everything is a skill. Everything is a skill. So whatever you're spending your time doing, you're practicing a skill, whatever it is. If, somebody comes to me and they're talking about like, man, I want to lose weight, but I'm not really good at doing that. Like,
Yeah.
I don't accept that as accurate. I think it's more accurate to say that it's not that you're not good at losing weight. It's that you're good at the skill of holding on to or putting on weight, right?
Right.
Because you're never not practicing something. Even when you're doing nothing, you're practicing something.
And the framing it like that also indicates that it's not really a guess if you practice this that you'll get some level of good at it. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it kind of throws out the notion of like, no, you're not bad at that. You don't practice.
You don't practice that particular skill.
Yeah.
Or you are not practicing that particular skill, to be more accurate. And everything comes down to a level of accuracy, which I think these days is a huge benefit to make a primary concern is being accurate, right?
Accurate speech. What's that from? That's like a huge thing in like kind of a personal development. Someone I really respect says that is like practice accurate speech.
Yeah. I don't know. I always say it.
Yeah.
So
maybe it's you.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm sure other people have come to this conclusion because it's true.
Yeah.
But
Jordan Peterson, I think, talks about accurate speech.
I'm all about it.
Yeah.
All about it. It's one of my first. So in Studio Sensei, I teach what's called the sustainable practice model. And it's one of the first rules of the model, of the method, right, is to practice accurate speech. Now, I'm constantly practicing it too. But at the same time, it's about putting it, making a resolve to always be doing that.
It's not, and like, if you literally for a week just sit there and try to catch yourself every time you're saying something that isn't necessarily true or isn't the whole truth or is a convenient lie, like, we're all lying a majority of the time.
Yeah.
And you like, once you start looking at it, you develop this voice in your head that starts to fight it. Like, it starts to say, like, that's not true. No, stop that. Like, and you stop doing it. Like, it happens but it's something that happened to me like maybe like 3 years ago. I just kind of realized, like, I just kind of said that to like feel like I was more important in that conversation, and it's not true.
There's a bunch of reasons why we do it, and it has everything to do with, again, what skill are we practicing? Are we practicing the skill of accurate speech? Are we practicing the skill of speech that's being given to us that doesn't necessarily serve our best interest?
Right.
For example, I'm a very strong believer of, like even what you just said. You said that, I think you said something to the effect of the majority of us are lying to ourselves, or a lot of us are lying to ourselves a majority of the time.
Right. It's like, that's not something I know.
It's not necessarily true.
Yeah.
But there is a loud demographic of people that would make you think that it's a majority of people and a majority of time being spent doing that. I don't have the statistics on it.
Right.
But it's simple exaggerations like that are based upon emotion that tend to have us flail and just grab whatever's closest to us.
And they seem benign.
They seem benign.
But it's the cumulative effect.
Yeah. Because
yeah.
it's a skill you're practicing. You're practicing the skill of inaccuracy. And when you're inaccurate with yourself, well, then you don't really get to where you want to go all the time, because your trajectory is based upon how you treat yourself and how you are able to check in with yourself. And if you're off a little bit in trajectory, you travel long enough, you'll be very off of where you say you want to be.
Right.
Right. So it,
which is why people end up in people end up in situations, whether it be like addicted to drugs or can't do this or that, like thing that's important to their life.
Yeah, they weren't shooting for that.
Right. And it seems almost insane
cases.
that they can't like see what you see, but it's like, no, that's the cumulative effect of becoming very good at telling yourself mistruths.
Yeah, or inaccuracies.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and they're both right, because a partial truth is not true.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Truth is absolute.
So it's even like, I do it all the time. Like one of the first things I teach to start accessing more accurate speech is removing the word should completely from your vocabulary, or as completely as you possibly can throughout the practice of doing so. I now have developed a pretty sensitive awareness of when that word's used, especially by myself.
Right.
Like you said a few minutes ago, you said these things and it felt like something I should already know.
Yeah.
You know? And
to you, it's I did already know.
Yeah. I said it to you already. I went back to that.
Yeah.
And I said,
this is why I love talking.
I said, well, you felt like you should know it because you do know it already. It's just that to put it more accurately, you just felt, you felt the sense of question, why isn't this more widely talked about? Why haven't I heard this or experienced or encountered this more often?
Yeah.
When it feels so
intuitive
and so which is the best word for it, but so it makes so much sense.
Yeah.
You know, and it makes so much sense because it's intuitive. And the answer to that is simply that a lot of the counter skills that we are taught to practice developing are skills that get us away from being able to decipher what our intuition's telling us.
Yeah, we're like obfuscating our internal voice constantly, especially as we grow up and when we enter like social hierarchies in high school. Your internal voice goes out the window in favor of...
It starts at a very like base level from the people that love you and that are your authority figures by nature. Your parents, your teachers, everybody that's older than you is somebody to look up to when you're a kid.
Yeah.
You know, so and if it's a loudly and largely practiced skill to not listen to your intuition and to question it, when instead of questioning your ability to interpret your intuition accurately, you know, then of course you're going to get away from it because you're practicing the skill of getting away from it.
You know, in our community, we get a lot of people who end up taking our trainings or being in our Facebook group who are like, I can't do this thing or I can't do that thing. And like can't is another word to me that's all near useless.
My dad always used to say, "Can't means won't." Like that's what that was what can't means won't.
To me, it's like if the thing you're saying you can't do is something that's never been done before, I believe you. If tons of people do it all day, every day, then you're full of shit. Like, you know, like. You simply don't want to, or you lack a fundamental belief in yourself that you possess mental powers that others possess. You know, like
it's often, in my experience, the latter.
Yeah,
you know, like so. This is the problem that arises when you practice the skill of not following your intuition or questioning your intuition, is you get to a point of training to mistrust yourself. And if in my belief, in my teaching, I believe that your intuitive voice is the most trustworthy thing you could find anywhere.
Yeah.
So that's why mistrusting your intuitive voice is like, well, if you can't trust that, what can you trust? Again, I think people inaccurately wind up mistrusting their intuitive voice when it was just their ability to interpret that intuitive voice.
That was corrupted?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or that, to put it simply, not practiced.
Right.
You know, it's kind of like that game of whisper down the alley, or what they call Chinese telephone. You know, you whisper in somebody's ear, say, you know.
There's like 20 people in a circle and they all pass it one to the other.
Yeah, they're all whispering each other's ear. And by the time, you know, it starts like Jello. Somebody says Jello in somebody's ear, and then it goes through 20 people. And by the time it gets back
Montana.
to you. Yeah, Montana. Right?
Yeah.
And that's kind of what happens when you don't practice, or rather when you practice something other than interpreting your intuitive voice accurately.
Yeah.
Is it bounces around in you, goes through all these places from it being this intuitive impulse. Then it goes through like, well, I don't know, last time I did this, it didn't work out too well. I don't know. And then you get to another question that says, well, do I have what it takes? Can I do this? You know, blah, 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 this, that, the other thing. And it does all these things.
Right.
So by the time it gets here, it's distorted, right? But when you practice interpreting your intuitive voice accurately, and the things that help you to practice interpreting your intuitive voice accurately, you start to level that distortion out to a straight line.
Yeah.
The shortest distance between your intuitive voice and the action that translates it.
I feel like there's a corollary for this in our community, which is like we have to often fight the frequent practice of, especially independent musicians, of just like boosting their numbers just to kind of like feel better or look better.
Right.
And we talk about how like, dude, your numbers financially, social media, any numbers are measuring forks. And when you flick them, you can't measure where you're at, you know, like you're just corrupting your ability to interpret what's going on.
Right.
And I think that's the exact same thing. It's like the second that you lose your ability to derive truth from your intuition and from your internal voice, you no longer, you're floating out there in space, and you're subject to like all this bullshit that can fill your head, like these narratives from external sources that you can't filter out because it's as true as whatever you're feeling to you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's a beautiful, monstrous skill that all of us possess, is the ability to make something that we believe true.
Yeah. yeah.
Perception being reality, you know, like, so, yeah, does exist.
Right. Yeah.
Because you believe
because
it
you
too.
have the power. Yeah, totally. And I always try to tell them like, look, you can, and you're just afraid. Like you're just afraid that maybe you'll get it a little bit wrong. And so I kind of like invite them to examine the consequences of like, let's say you screw this up massively.
Yeah.
What's going to happen?
I mean, what does it matter if you can't do it? And that's really what erasing should comes from, you know, like completely taking should out of your vocabulary, is because, look, I'm not saying to be, you know, optimistic or pessimistic or a realist, whatever those terms mean to people.
You do that a lot. You question whether, like, he'll probably in a conversation with him and be like, does that actually mean anything? Like this word? And we examine it and I'm like, no, it doesn't mean anything.
Yeah, optimism, it's a good strategy, but like it's not all there is. And realism is just something people often use to counteract optimists. Like, I'm a realist. Like,
yeah, it's like the Bloods. Like you just exist because the Crips existed.
What does it mean pragmatic? Like practically, what? How can you use these to your benefit? I think if your concern is accuracy, those words don't mean too much.
Right.
Right. And my concern is accuracy. So I don't like the word should because it's not accurate often.
Right.
Right. Like I can't think of, like right now, here's an exercise. Give me a scenario in which should is accurate. Like you should or shouldn't do something. Right.
Well, I will.
Like what's something everybody should do or shouldn't do?
Yeah, everyone should breathe.
Why?
Except for dead people.
Why?
Because we're an oxygen dependent organism.
But who says? What if I don't want to?
I don't really have a comeback for that.
You don't, because not everyone should. You know?
Yeah.
What's another one? Easy stuff. Like what's everything somebody shouldn't do? Or something everyone shouldn't do.
You shouldn't eat arsenic.
Why?
Because it's devastating to your body.
Yeah, but who says like I shouldn't do it? You know, like.
Oh yeah. No, I was about to say. Like,
that's what I'm saying. Like,
it's entirely contingent upon the opinion of a nameless other.
Right. It's just not accurate.
Yeah.
It's not accurate to say, oh, you shouldn't do that. You shouldn't kill people. Why? Right?
Yeah.
Well, because you'll go to jail, or it costs a lot more emotionally, spiritually, and physically to do so. Or it's just not kind. And all those reasons are valid reasons, but those are all context upon which why you shouldn't, right?
They're all specific to the individual saying the reason.
Yeah. It all depends. Now, I don't want to kill anybody because I'm not willing to pay the price emotionally, spiritually, mentally, and physically, and contextually being in prison.
Yeah.
Or possibly, or even just being on the run from someone finding out. Or all the things that come with it. The package deal that comes with killing somebody.
I think the same...
I don't want to.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I think that's what it really comes down to is, well, I think it's more accurate to say could. You could do that. You could kill somebody.
Yeah.
Well, what do you want to do? I think could is just a bridge to want.
Well, I think also
want
directly implies the person whose opinion it is. Like should, indicates some like vague
It doesn't even directly imply the person. It directly implies what that person wants.
Right. Well, that's what I mean. Is like should is like who says, but want is like I want.
Yes.
Yeah.
Your want. Your intuitive voice that's leaning you towards a particular thing that you want in your life.
Oh, yeah. So when you say should, you externalize your internal voice.
Yep, exactly.
Oh, shit.
You outsource personal credit to a made up imaginary external credit.
Wow. And that robs all the power of
an imaginary external source.
Wow.
And you're squandering the practice, what could be a practice of trusting yourself.
Yeah, and people worry that like, oh, if I say want, then I'm responsible for this feeling.
Yeah.
And maybe that saves your life, feeling that responsibility for what you actually believe.
That responsibility is a gift.
Yeah.
But we're taught that it's something to be shameful of when it goes a different way.
See, this is why.
Yeah, I mean, and it goes down to a simple word. A simple word. And what's great is like you got to exactly where I was going, by just traveling there with me, and
taking the journey,
taking those things into consideration.
I didn't understand where it's cool because when you started out this point, I had no idea where you were going with it.
So one should like for one thing should helps you to practice not trusting yourself, and because you're practicing something that's inaccurate. And then B, want allows you to practice trusting your intuitive voice and yourself and deeming what you want being important.
It's also exposure therapy. It exposes you to the actual end consequence of maybe just saying you want to. Because you're worried that you lose options when you say want. Because now people are going to know I want this thing. That'll form their opinions about me. Then I'll have to chase that thing and I might not get it. And it's just, you need to be exposed to all that fallout you're worried about.
And the fact that a lot of it doesn't exist.
Right. It's imaginary.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's like you're starting to train a sense of greater risk where one does not exist.
Yeah.
And that's dangerous. Like, that's not in your best interest to do, because then you start to think that you start to feel like it's more dangerous to follow what your wants are when it in fact is not dangerous at all.
Yeah.
You know, like I have people in Studio Sensei sessions who are afraid to finish music or afraid to finish something that they're working on. And it comes down to a sense of fear.
And they're probably saying a whole lot of like, I really should finish it.
And that should is reinforcing the fear.
Right.
By way of not learning how to trust themselves to a place where they can give themselves evidence that there's no risk involved, or comparatively no risk to, say, going to the grocery store. There's a lot more risk going to the grocery store, yet we've given ourselves enough evidence that we can do it a bunch of times with no effect, with no dangerous effect.
Yeah.
And yet we'll go to the grocery store and risk our lives in 1,000 different ways possible, you know, that could spring up on the way there. And, you know, not like, say, finish a piece of music or work on a piece of music.
You don't even have to leave the chair you're sitting in.
I'd argue that I'd win the argument that there's a lot less risk to work on the music.
I think that I got way into Jordan Peterson when he was first coming out. Mm-hmm. Guy's wrapped up in a whole lot of like other stuff.
Sure, I'm not familiar. I actually hear of it because everyone's always telling me like, "Oh, you'd love this guy."
You would. He's a Canadian psychologist, and like he's also wrapped up with like figures in the alt-right. He's not alt-right in any way.
Sure, he's wrapped up in it. Though.
He's wrapped up in it. He's associated with it.
I'm sure he's wrapped up in it because he considers questions that other people are afraid to get near because
they have connotations there. Yeah, yeah, totally. It's exactly why.
It's the same reason why, you know, I will on air say, well, why shouldn't you kill somebody?
Yeah, yeah.
I'm not promoting killing somebody.
DiVinci's a murdering supporter.
I'm not promoting that at all.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm promoting the question of getting down to the thing that actually will prevent you from doing it.
Yeah, yeah.
Because just basing the fact that you shouldn't do it, basing it off of the fact that you shouldn't, which is some imaginary concept that really doesn't have any base.
Yeah.
If you base it on something that doesn't have base, you know, you might wind up doing it someday.
Totally. That's it. And especially like...
But if you come to the realization that it's something that you ultimately do not want, that's a stronger base to stand on.
The greatest mass murderers in history are entirely funded by externalization. That's, you know, it wouldn't have happened if it wasn't the powerful capabilities of externalization.
Yeah, there's a certain amount of repression that breeds that.
Or to say like, oh no, I'm just following orders. That's externalization.
Yep.
Yeah. But he came out because Canada wanted to...
Repression of self in favor of an external source.
That's what causes mass murder. Yeah, absolutely. And so Jordan Peterson came out against compelled speech, what he interpreted as Canada proposed Canadian laws to compel people to use certain gender pronouns, or there would be legal consequences.
Sure.
And he was like, look, I'll call you whatever you want me to call you, but not if you try to make me, never, right? Never going to support limitation of speech. So anyways, that's how he got famous. But he talks about, seems like what I got from him was like, oh, the point of life is to accumulate responsibility, and there's no payoff. That's the payoff, is you accumulate responsibility. You first start to be responsible for yourself, then maybe you have so much responsibility you can give some to your family. And then you have so much responsibility you can bring up your community, and that in itself is the payoff. I'm not here to tell you that you'll get $1 million at the end of it. No. You'll have just the work capacity of responsibility for your whole community. And it kind of like you might find yourself in a very dark place where you've been a victim of this capability of externalization, and you just kind of blaming everything on external, you know, phenomena or people, and you can't even take responsibility for yourself. And so he kind of talks about that same thing where it's like, no, it's nobody's fault but yours.
Right.
But also it's nobody's capability to solve but yours.
Yeah, responsibility is something that's such a gift to realize, because when you realize that it's your fault, it's also your ability to undo, and fantastic. You don't have to wait around for anyone for that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like that affords you a certain level of control,
100%.
And I think that's in everyone's best interest.
Yeah. It seems like working with creatives, there's a lot of that. It probably. I think no creative gets into, very few creatives. I won't say no because it's too absolute, but like in my experience,
That's not accurate.
it's not accurate. No. It's not accurate. In fact, there's a lot of creatives who don't fit into this classification, but I think a lot of creatives, fair amount, enough to consider, get into it from half a place of, I have a creative talent, a creative vision. I follow creative people. I want to be one of those people. And half, I don't like math. I'm not so good at English. I don't want to really work in an office. They might have a tumultuous childhood like myself. They might be traumatized people. And for those people, these things are especially true. For those people, it's like they have that problem of externalization, because when you're a kid and you're going through trauma, it can't be your responsibility. You know what I mean? So having responsibility hoisted on you in such an extreme way at a young age makes you incapable of it later on. And so it's just like, interfacing with a lot of creatives, it seems like we're all plagued by a similar disease,
Right. It's interesting because I have this thought about creativity that it's more widespread than people think. Without discussing beliefs, if one believes that they are of God, why wouldn't they be of their creator? Like, because things beget themselves.
Why would you not create? Right.
Yeah. If God's a creator, if something created you, why wouldn't you also be a creator in some sort of sense? And I also believe that, like, our lives are, to use some sort of analogy, a blank canvas on which we paint whatever our autobiography would read later. So I think everyone's creating their own life to some degree.
Right.
How much they take credit for it or not is immaterial.
Right.
Everyone's painting some sort of picture that they wind up living.
Yeah.
And I think everyone's a creative in this sense. And
I kind of have similar beliefs that, like,
so for you to say that this particularly influences creatives, I agree with you, but everyone's a creative.
Well, what I mean is the people who go so far as to deem themselves that.
Right. No, I will say this, though, to the effect of what you're getting at, what I believe you're getting at, is that when people own that they're a creative, when they resolve to say that they are, and go as far to pursue it as a profession, or even a lifelong hobby or practice, well, then they start to see these things for what they actually are, and they will come face to face with the problems that plague all creatives, aka all people,
right?
In a much more direct way, in a much more tangible way as well. That it's like, okay, well, shoot, I'm trying to make a career out of being a creative. Then this thing that's in my way from doing it to my utmost ability or to the way that I would like to is going to have a name.
Yeah.
This enemy that's in front of me is going to have some sort of name.
Stephen Pressfield called it the resistance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. So that resistance is going to, it's kind of like religions give, names to actual demons and things like that. When I just believe that there are no demons or bad guys. There's just
we literally
behaviors, and skills.
Absolutely, yeah.
Which are just as good as demons. I'm not saying that they might as well be, right?
Right. The difference is lost all meaning.
You know, while we're on this tip, since the analogy or the metaphor is right there to take, you know, in certain religions they say you're born into sin.
Yeah.
But what is sin? But you know, like in for example, in I think it's Latin, the root of the word means like
Miss the
archery,
mark. Yeah,
to
yeah.
miss the mark.
Yeah.
Inaccuracy
Yeah.
is sin.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I believe that we are born into that. We are born into a widely, loudly practiced skill of inaccuracy. And I would say it's absolutely true. We're born into sin. And all the things that you could say in some sort of spiritual realm, you know, happen. There's a very practical, like physical world interpretation of that existing too.
Yeah.
And vice versa. So
It's interesting that the like inaccuracy being a sin is literally a sin.
yeah.
It seems to indicate that honesty and truthful speech is the aim.
It's divine.
It's what you're aiming at.
Yeah,
Right. Yeah. That's so interesting, man. These things seem to be very deeply rooted.
That's why I say God is a skill, because if you do believe in God, then it works also.
Yeah.
Because if God is a skill, what are you practicing?
Yeah,
You're going to practice God?
It's
you know what I mean?
It seems like, and this is why I really like Christian mythologists who kind of take a more like interpretive slant on the Bible and the New and Old Testament. I love how they think about it, because it's like, look, whether or not you're obsessed with the human condition or the New and Old Testament, same shit, man.
Yeah. I like it because it gets to the point of it.
Yeah.
You know, you're getting to the point of what it means. So you don't have to believe in it. You don't have to believe that God exists. You could just believe that something bigger than you exists.
It's also like it took me a long time to figure out that, like, oh no, the big deal is not that, like, because you get the impression growing up that, especially in America, that like most people who follow a certain religion take a literalist stance on it. And, like there is no psychology to it for them. It's like, these things happened, and therefore I will, for the rest of my life, practice these things. It's like,
and that works for some people. And the reason why it works is because it's a direct reflection of what's going on psychologically or internally or whatever.
Right.
I mean, you could say we're born into sin. We're all born into sin, into inaccuracy. And if you don't believe in God, you could say, well, I do believe in something bigger than myself. And if you identify yourself as your mind, which many of us do, a lot of us are taught that skill to identify, who I think I am is who I am. Well, then you're identifying who you are as something small, because your brain is much smaller than your body. You only have to believe in your body to believe in something bigger than yourself, your small mind. Right? So all you have to do is believe that on the very, you can believe in skyscrapers are bigger than you. You know what I mean? Like, but on a very primary level, you believe in your body over your mind, that exists, and that's bigger than you, the quote unquote you that you identify yourself as your mind.
Yeah.
Right. So if you believe that, and then you also believe it in that you're born into sin, and you practice inaccuracy, sooner or later, you're going to, if the equivalent to God is your body, right? Your body's going to put you through hell.
Not only that, but dude, I found out that in the Bible, because we tend to intuit that hell is it's a very deeply rooted concept that hell is a pit of flames, right? Is with a guy ruling over it, and there's demons that will torture you for all eternity. The original instance of hell, as it was conceptualized, is a pit, meaning we're going to bury you in the ground, right? And the original concept of hell was that you'll just be without God. You're not going to be in flames. We're not going to
without your body.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. You'll be without God in a pit, and that's it forever.
And I believe that, I believe as above, so below, and sideways. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
So if it's true, that if you're born into the sin of inaccuracy, and your body is God to the mind that is small, the higher power, the bigger power, well then if you continue to sin and practice a skill of inaccuracy, well, then you're going to go through some sort of hell. Your body's going to put you through hell, whether it's some sort of mental, physical, or disease. You know, that's the life of suffering is it could be described as hell. But the thing is, you can go further beyond that. If that's true on a small level, why wouldn't it be true on a bigger level as well? You know, so you could also then say, well, your body is a better antenna for the divine than your mind is because it's a bigger part of the antenna. You know what I mean?
You talk a lot about that, about being in your body.
Oh, yeah. Mainly as, and it's funny because somebody later introduced me to like Joseph Campbell and how he actually talks about this.
Joseph Campbell's hero's journey?
Yeah. I didn't realize this, but when I was developing my talk, Free Your Fingers, Free Your Mind, that I did in Berlin at Ableton Loop, a symposium that happened in Berlin, I did in 2016. I was doing like personal research to develop this talk, and it was all about flow state and how we get out of flow state and what happens and how to get back in. How to increase the likelihood of getting back in and staying there. And one of the things that I came to realize is like every single time, and this was like relevant in my life too, because I found when I was most depressed, when I was most in that pit of downness, of depression or whatever you want to call, it was because I was in my head, you know, and it's when we start to cut off.
It took me so long to really contextualize what in your head means. Like, you're in your head.
Yeah.
Oh, it means like I'm fucking walking around in here and just like bouncing around and around and around.
Yeah, you're using that as your reality when it's not in fact the case.
Totally.
And I believe that the mind is a simulator and really not much more. You know,
that's exactly what it is.
I mean, that's it.
Yeah.
And
for anyone listening who's like, what? Like, literally, like, every single sense you have is not reality. Like, it is a filtered version of some aspects of reality. But it's a sensor at the end of the day, and sensors have their limitations, you know?
And the way that we use our mind in a conscious way, or unconscious ways for some, is we just simulate all these outcomes, right?
Right.
We plug in all this data that we think up and that we also experience, quote unquote experience, and we plug it in there, and then we get our search results, and then we, based upon a bunch of different things, tend to choose one to believe.
A lot of us, what we do is we'll rerun it.
Oh, yeah.
Over and over and over again.
It's kind of like its own Google, you know? It's like,
yeah.
And in a similar way, whatever you plug in there, the way that you word it plugging in, you're going to get biased
different
results, you know, based upon the algorithms that bring you results. So it's
Is that something you've said before?
Yeah.
Because I bet the minute you came up with that, you were like, ooh.
That's what's great about this work is like I really like those little those things that are like ooh,
makes
you know
everything
what I mean?
click, dude.
I have a couple like that, you know, that and they make that. Those are the things that you said earlier, like you felt you should have known.
Yeah,
you already know that.
Yeah,
those things. It's just
they get found a layer to put over it.
Yeah,
that makes me see through it.
They get put in a way that makes you that makes it sound like how it feels.
Yeah,
that's really what it comes down to. Yeah, you know, and that's a really beautiful thing when that happens. So when I come up with like what I call bits, you know, like when I come up with a bit that like nails down accurately the feeling via words.
That's divine to be able to express, you know, something that
certainly the opposite of sin.
Something that's some things are so true that they can't be said. Some things are so true that they're deep down at the root.
So we think until
said. You find it. Until you
said.
Find the bit.
Yeah. But until it's said, and then you start to believe in something bigger than what you believed in before, because now it's like, oh my goodness. This thing that I thought was too high to see in my life, I have now proof.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so true, man.
And take that on any metaphoric, analogic, you know, journey you want to. But like when you see something that you think's higher than you thought possible to be tangible become tangible, it changes everything.
Taking the assumption that all people are or can be creative, which is something that I also believe. I also believe, weirdly, that everyone can sing. Some people are more afraid to sing out in front of others than most people, so they end up sounding shitty. But taking that assumption that all people are creative, but some choose to publicly proclaim it, usually in a time in their lives where it's a hellstorm. There's a lot going on that's making it difficult to be typically a teenager, is what I've seen. Maybe that's because as a troubled youth, I've tended to associate with other troubled youths. But it just seems like the people who decide, I'm a creative, I'm a rapper, I'm a producer, I play guitar, I'm in a band, I'm a filmmaker, they've had some fucked up shit go on in their lives. Is that something that you've encountered?
I find it hard to find people that haven't experienced some
kind of
trauma.
Yeah, totally.
I mean, if we're all born into the sin of inaccuracy, then
some shit's gonna go down.
Then we're all kind of traumatized to some degree.
Yeah.
Whether by osmosis, or in practice or directly, I think there's some sort of level of that we all experience. I think that, and this isn't just me being dramatic, but like your parents asking you, did you brush your teeth? And then you being like, yeah. And then them going, did you brush your teeth? Did you really?
Terrifying.
Like, I really feel that on some level, whether you want to call that trauma or not, it has the same effect. Because your authority figure, this loving authority figure for you, is the very person that you're learning how to develop your internal voice that you assign to your intuition.
Is questioning
you.
Yeah.
Doesn't trust you. And that's where the use of words should comes from anyway. You know what I mean?
You probably don't like think either, huh? I thought I did.
Well, no, that could be true. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah. It very rarely is,
things,
especially in the case of little kids. What they mean is like, I didn't, and I want it to seem like I had a conscious thought to do it and somehow forgot.
Yeah, and there might be they might actually not be telling the truth. So it's not completely out of, I'm not saying that parents are being cruel by questioning their kids or even thinking that they're not telling the truth, because some of them are at an age where they're understanding that that's an option and they're trying it out.
You're saying traumatic circumstances are like natural and inevitable.
I'm just saying that they have the same effect, because depending on how it's delivered and what it's being delivered with and how consistently it is, it could lead you to not trust yourself as an adult. You know what I mean? And question yourself.
A big, like, when people come to, like, when I was younger, I was kind of like the de facto therapist for all my friends.
Same here. That's why I created Studio.
Yeah, totally, man. And a thing that I commonly have said throughout my life is just like, and at one point in college, I remember Casey Schumacher, my friend, was on the podcast last week, and I brought this up to him because he didn't remember, but I was in a room with him and all his friends. And somehow it came into conversation where I was just like, oh yeah, life's just like a ball of shit, like burning, and you have to make good with it. It's on you. Life's not just gonna be tight for you. You have to have the internal capacity to like make a good situation out of bad, circumstances. And everyone looked at me like I had three heads. They were like, life's good. What are you talking about? You alarming us, right? And I was like, no, right? Like, life's awful. Like there's all this external.
Well, therein lies like the lies, the effects of inaccuracy.
And what I meant was there will be blood.
Yeah.
That's what I meant. Is that trauma?
It's not just a pile of shit. You
Right.
know,
That's not what I meant. But
what's our good friend Alexandra say? Alexandra from Soliloquists.
She says everything is both.
Everything is both.
Everything is both.
Everything is both.
Yeah. But I just kind of meant to say that, like, yeah, like, you can't navigate life without inflicting horrifying trauma on everyone you cross paths with. Like, I'm not being absolute there. There's some you won't. But, like, even as you described, like, a parent trying to parent their child, there's going to be stuff that
Hardship's inescapable.
Yes, exactly.
that?
Yeah. Cultivate yourself accordingly.
And it's easy to say hardship's inescapable because when it comes down to it, there's different levels of hard for different people. You know, like, I'm not here to diminish third world or first world, or rather first world problems in comparison to third world, because they're different.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I know people that grew up with money and they're miserable.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because...
And you don't envy them. You don't?
No.
Yeah. Like, people are like, but come on. And it's
Yeah,
like,
no.
no, I don't want to be them.
No, that's not to say I don't want a lot of money.
Yeah.
'Cause I do. Yeah. But at the same time, like, it's not necessarily, you know, they don't necessarily have it any better.
Right.
You know, they're going through their own personal hell, you know, in some sort of ways. And partly because of how they received that money and the life that afforded them. And there's something to be said for hardship. It affords you a richer life in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Failure is the currency in which we pay for our successes.
At least that's what made me feel good as a kid, man. It made me feel good to be like, no, we're the salt of the earth. We're the
There's something to be said
kids.
for it. It's not all there is.
Yeah, yeah.
It's not ultimately the infinitely sustainable.
And it puts you at
that way.
Great disadvantage in some ways.
In some ways.
Yeah.
But in a more sustainable way, I'd say it put you at a higher advantage.
Because you have the faculties to overcome hardship. Is that why?
It creates great practice. You know, the reason I call Studio Sensei is because obviously a lot of people know me for music. But the very first thing I ever learned, my dad taught me, the very first art that I ever learned was martial arts.
Yeah.
Before I could walk, he was teaching me throughout my whole life, still to this day. And because of that, it became my first language, my reference point for all other things.
It's a good place to start.
Oh, man, it's fantastic, especially the way he teaches. And he's an incredible martial artist, but he really gets martial arts too. And you know, what it stands for, what it represents. Not necessarily, you know, something he told me about martial arts is that it's something you'll practice. He told me, is this something you're going to practice the rest of your life? You're never going to master it, and you'll hope to never use it. He said, you're going to practice this for the rest of your life. You're never going to master it, and you hope to never use it. And I'm like, okay, you know what I mean? And
that's kind of what I meant by, like, there's no payoff to accumulating responsibility.
Sure.
Is like, you're never going to...
It's the same thing as saying God is skill, and then meaning everything's a skill and everything else is practice. So with that logic, you know, I tend to never look at things as actual fights. They're all sparring matches. And a sparring match is very different from a fight. Very different.
The consequences are less dire?
There's a ton of reasons why it's different.
Right.
Some of the most fundamental is the objective of fighting versus the objective of sparring. When I'm fighting somebody, it's to what? For a lot of different reasons, right? It's to defeat them. It's to defend myself. It's to, you know...
but it's not to get better, usually.
Right.
Yeah.
Sparring is an environment in which you fight to learn.
Yeah.
To better yourself. You know? It's an opportunity to learn, which is the truth when you think of any conflict. Any conflict is an opportunity to learn.
Dude, furthermore, any skill, anything that you could want to practice is sparring. It's like
everything's sparring.
Yeah. Yeah.
Everything is sparring. So if everything is sparring and you're getting your ass kicked, you're going to learn more.
Yeah.
My dad, when he would learn, when he first started taking martial arts, he was a kid, and he would go to the kids class, and then he'd stay after and wait a couple hours for the adults class.
Yeah,
He
dude.
would get his ass handed to him in the adults class.
Yep.
But he wouldn't in the kids class.
Mike Tyson.
In the
Mike
kids
Tyson
class,
got beat the fuck
right
up when
in the
he was
kids
starting
class.
out.
He was alpha. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? He was the one.
Oh no, I'm thinking of Roy Jones Jr.
Sure.
Philly Shell, right?
Yeah.
He literally became unpunchable because he had to fight kids who were like twice his age.
If I'm sparring and you can hit me in the face, please hit me in the face. You know what I mean? If that's part of the rules. Because
You're just showing me where the hole is.
exactly.
Yeah.
If you don't show me where the hole is, I don't know where to plug.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Everyone's looking for the plug. No one's looking for the hole. There's another one.
Yo, you're gonna do addiction counseling now, dude.
And that's funny because like that's even affected my personal life, like with friends. You know, because I grew up with the person I loved first, like my parents, like my dad.
Yeah.
You know, one of the people I loved first, you know, kicking my ass every day. You know, for teaching purposes, not like
Right.
for discipline,
Right.
but for like
And not for fun.
he might have had a little
You
fun
might have
with
a
it.
little
Yeah, I think he had some fun with it. I have some pictures. I'm going to send you a picture and you can put it up on your screen. It looks really sadistic and horrible, but I'm like, my dad's so much smaller than me, but he's like, has his whole body wrapped around me. He's choking me out. And
like a boa constrictor.
yeah. And he's got the biggest smile on his face. And I just have the face that you have on your face 2 seconds before you black out.
Right.
Remind me to send this to you so
Please,
you can put
yes,
it in the
absolutely.
but yeah, that's what's showing right now. Yeah, that one.
Yeah.
That one. So yeah, like yeah, he probably enjoyed it, but because he knew like it was, you know, there was a level of fun to it. But I used to go around to my friends in school and kick their ass too. Because that's how I was taught how to love. You know, I actually, you know, my dad would mess around with me and hit certain pressure points where he almost made me, you know, like go to the bathroom on myself and stuff
Oh
like
my
that.
God.
And then I do that to my friends at school because it's a fun trick. And
I
you
used to
know,
walk up to friends and dig my finger right into
Yeah.
here. And it actually doesn't hurt if you can not freak out,
right.
but everyone freaks out.
Everyone freaks out.
Always.
So like I remember I went up to one of my friends in junior high school or something like that, high school. And I was like, hey, what's up? And boom, boom, hit him or something like that. And then he's like, you know, that really hurts when you do that. And then like an impromptu intervention, everyone else in that circle that was there at that time was like, yeah, you really hurt us sometimes when you, I felt like so much shit. Like I felt
You
horrible.
didn't yet know to say, well, then block.
Yeah. Well, that was one of the first times I realized how I had a different upbringing than other people. And
See,
also-
I shared mine with you.
yeah.
This is here.
And then like later I realized that when I would get in arguments with some friends, I would kind of be like watching them get angry and be like, why are you getting angry at me? And it's because like people aren't used to sparring, they're used to fights. Right? And I now preface any close friend I have, hey, look, if we ever get into a fight, an argument, or anything like that, it's because I'm trying to break the invisible glass between us. I'm not actually throwing punches at you. I'm throwing punches at this thing that's separating us. You know, a lack of skill to better communicate with each other in most cases. And I want you to know I was brought up this way. And if it ever feels like a fight, just know that for me, it's a sparring match. And just let me know.
I have the same problem with rhetoric. Like not physical punches, but people tend to think that I'm like being a dick. I'm just having a little sparring match, like intellectually. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I get that. I get that. And since I've realized that, it's improved a lot of things because there's a big difference between a fight and sparring match. And there's a big difference between who you get into a fight with and who you spar with. You don't spar with your enemy.
Right.
Right? You spar with the person you trust the most.
Right.
It's in fact quite the opposite thing. You spar with the person that you trust more. It's a special person that you spar with.
Right.
Right? So the objective in a sparring match to put this all in context, it's to learn more.
About yourself, really.
Yeah, to better your technique in whichever art you're practicing. And what betters your technique more than somebody who's a great sparring partner? And the definition of great sparring partner is not someone who pulls their punches. In fact, I hate that guy, because if you're pulling your punches, you're literally getting me punched for real in real life.
Right, you're withholding information from me.
Yes.
Yeah.
You are putting me through false training that's going to teach me how to get killed.
Man, this is so this is so reverberative of my entire life. But in Massachusetts, like growing up in Boston, you and your friends.
Oh yeah, Bostonites.
Awful to each
other.
other.
I love Bostonites.
But it's so that when we're in an actual, like, someone's trying to talk shit to us, no way.
You couldn't even
luck.
get word one out.
Right.
Yeah, like,
and people, when I came to Florida, people were like, and
I didn't realize
like,
you were from Boston.
Yeah.
My respect level goes up higher for you, because
Yeah.
some of my favorite friends come from Boston, because they're so, there's an atmospheric contextual learning environment, like, because it's rough up there, like,
yeah.
both in weather and in, social climate.
Yeah.
But it's also, there's a lot of information available. It's
this
Ivy
weird,
League schools exist there.
It's good. It is Goodwill Hunting. Like it is.
It very much is.
You get the shit beaten out of you. You get in a lot of trouble, but you also learn like neurochemistry in your garage or some shit.
It is. I think that's exactly. I know Yale is up there. Harvard.
Harvard is.
Harvard's up there.
MIT.
And the School of Hard Knocks, I think, is where it exists up there too.
I believe that's Emerson. Yeah.
But exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And it's because like I want to know. I want to know what insults are going to come at me. I want to know how someone's going to attack. I want to know all of that.
I just got done talking to somebody who was questioning the time I invested into having arguments online.
That was valuable training.
It's valuable training.
I did it the worst. You'll find threads from me a mile long.
And the reason I do that is because, look, people say don't waste your time on it. I'm not wasting my time on it because there's other people reading this thread. And at the very least, you're extracting a solution that gets to be refined by bullheadedness, that somebody that's not going to listen. Imagine when I take that answer that maybe even kind of convinces a person that doesn't want to listen to somebody who does want to listen. It's going to work so well.
Yeah.
I wrote a book based upon somebody I used to have arguments with.
Really?
Yeah, it's called Neo-Humanism, A Survival Guide for Those Who Choose to Be. I wrote it when I was like 20-something, and it all was written because I used to have these conversations with somebody who experienced trauma in their life to a point where I couldn't get over a certain decibel level with them. And as soon as I did, they would have to check out. And
right.
I get conversational blue balls, and then I would go, pleasure myself by writing another chapter in this book that I put out.
Wow. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's I competed in national forensics when I was in high school. And the point of it is you need a lot of debates before you can actually debate a topic. Like, because you need to know what all the arguments for the affirmative are before you can contest it. And when you talk to someone, when you have a conversation and you are on opposing sides, like that part of me instantly goes like, ooh, okay, I can get good haptic feedback here. So I can make my argument. You can poke holes in it. I can decimate those holes. That's the whole point.
Yeah.
It all seems to tie back to what we're talking about.
It totally is. It completely is.
You should want to learn the ways in which you're weak. You should want to learn the ways in which you're inadequate. You should want to learn.
You just use should a whole lot.
Yeah.
I checked out. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just playing with you.
Yeah.
No, I mean, to reframe.
In my opinion, it's wise to.
It's in your best interest.
Right.
One of the words I love the most that is a funny word to a lot of people is behoove.
It would behoove you
it would behoove you to.
Yeah.
There's no other word in the English language that I know of that at its core services what is in your best interest.
Right.
And that's what really people are saying when they say should. What they're saying is they're saying the shorthand for based upon what you want, it would be in your best interest to.
Right.
And instead of saying based upon what you want, it would be in your best interest to, they say should.
Yeah.
And then all the negative side effects of that
Well,
come with
because
it.
should makes the who is involved very fuzzy.
Yeah.
But when you say based on what you want, that's you.
Yeah.
It's in your
And
best
putting
interest.
in focus
that's
what you
me.
want. You're right.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm
Be in your
saying
best
it.
interest.
Yeah, yeah. So it's two people.
based
should
upon the
is
per-
everybody.
The person that wants to better themselves, right? And that's what I get from martial arts. That's why I like Studio Sensei, because it encompasses two things that kind of like really sum up some my passions in life and what's driven me really before it was even a passion. And that is, through martial arts is an art of self-development for me, and music is an art of innovation for me.
Right.
So Studio Sensei gets summed up really nicely in that way. And for what you're talking about as far as the person that should be interested in their, what'd you say?
Finding out what you don't know, how you're inadequate,
right.
how you're weak.
It really comes down to the person that's interested in self-betterment. It's in their best interest
Yeah.
to seek these things out.
In Tibetan Buddhism, no one really reads the central text. You read other texts that explain it.
My dad always used to tell me, have many masters. There's a lot of martial arts teachers who are like, no, just go to me. But
Right.
he would say, no, go to other schools and see how they do it, and things like putting things in context.
Yeah.
is huge.
So in Tibetan Buddhism, they have this book called Lamp for Lighting the Path to Enlightenment or something like that. And in it, the Buddha, the Bodhisattva says, he doesn't say you should do this or thou shalt not. He says, those who wish to seek enlightenment, cultivate yourself in this manner.
Beautiful.
That's it. That's exactly what you're hinging on. Is like,
Beautiful.
No, this isn't
Specific.
Yeah, yeah. If you want this result, cultivate yourself thusly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's what I've been working on lately.
So it seems like, because like I've always been, when you get into digital marketing, you're exposing yourself also to multi-level marketers like Amway and Herbalife and stuff like that, which is sketchy to me, and then also personal coaching and
Multi-level marketers. That's a nice word.
That's what the pyramid scheme.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I got it.
There's multiple. There's multiple levels.
That's why I said it's a nice.
That's what they call it.
Yeah, sure.
But also like Tony Robbins and like the personal coach, self-help development kind of stuff. Some of that stuff is very valid to me, naturally. Some of that stuff is just sleaze on sleaze. It's just kind of slimy.
What's the sleazy part?
The sleazy part is a lot of times people who just never really worked to cultivate any particular skill will use that as like a back door to their life and be like, oh, I'm a life coach. Because I don't really have shit together. So we charge $9.97 for a month of life coaching.
Sure.
That's kind of what they decided to do. They haven't really achieved anything that would make me go, oh, I should listen to you. Now, that's not a prerequisite for me taking your advice that you're like wildly accomplished.
Right.
But if I'm paying you an exorbitant amount of money, like you should have done something,
Right. It helps.
Yeah, definitely helps.
It helps establish authority.
Yeah. Even if it's like you meditated in the desert for 2 years, I don't care. It doesn't have to be like money.
Right.
Just something that takes like concerted effort.
Yeah. I mean, you want to know that you're being mentored by somebody who's in the place you'd like to be.
Yeah. Yeah. I'd also like there to be like some kind of scientific validity to like any claims that you make.
Sure.
And that sometimes that doesn't happen in that world.
Right.
But when I talk to you, and this is not new.
By the way, Tony Robbins is in a much better place than both of us. So
I like Tony Robbins. I like Tony Robbins. I think
I've gotten a lot of comparisons to him.
he's got a lot of weird things with pricing. Very weird.
Man, that business is crazy.
Yeah, he's got a very successful business. And also like in personal coaching, it's long been a tactic that like, hey, you want to amp up the breakthroughs, put them in a room for 2 days. Don't let them go to the bathroom. That's going to make a lot of people pop.
Sure.
So that part of it sketches me out. But I only say all that to say that I would buy Studio Sensei, like thinking about when I'm going to implement it, right?
Yeah, you would do a plan.
Yeah. And
let me go ahead.
oh, just to say that like I've never met anybody who I'd want to have an hour conversation with about the difficulties I'm facing mentally, spiritually, and otherwise. Until, like I really heard you talk. I think it was the first time I was at Studio 18. Also the Tubbsy interview where I was like,
Yeah.
this guy's not bullshit.
Right. Well,
and I only say that to get into, like, I'm not trying to get you to respond to praise because that's the hardest thing to do in the world.
I'll respond to it.
But I simply mean to ask, like, who is Studio Sensei for?
Well, I do want to respond to the compliment
I'll
that
accept
is. By first responding to the thing that I agree with you on, that to me, coaching has become kind of a dirty word.
Yeah.
And that simply comes from the fact that there's a lot of people that misuse the word, misuse the position on both sides, coachees and coaches.
Yeah.
There's people who get addicted to coaching,
Totally.
or use it as a way to satiate action in their life. Same thing that a lot of us, many people do, which is talk about things instead of doing them to feel like they're done.
Yeah.
And that's a crime. And that's not true. You know what I mean? It's inaccurate. It's a
Yeah.
sin.
Yeah.
So I like I said, this is a creative self-development platform. I'm offering a lot of different ways to get there. One-on-one sessions are definitely the flagship piece to that at the moment.
Yeah.
And I'm remiss to call it coaching for the connotation that some...
To me, it's like, it's something I'd be willing to call coaching.
Sure.
Do you know what I mean? Like,
I'd argue maybe it's...
because it's actually
more coaching than some other things are.
assistance from an external source in the practice of a skill.
That's exactly what it is.
Yeah.
I mean, that's exactly what it is. And the thing that I like about it is I strive to make it a very well-rounded approach. Not just about technique, because there's a lot of people that are going to come to me that say,
Be like, teach me how to produce.
Teach me how to produce.
That's what this
teach
is,
me how
right?
to use the Ableton push. Teach me how to use Ableton. Teach me how to use MPC. Teach me how to finger drum. All these things. But I can sum that stuff up with a quick Google search, YouTube search, point you in the direction of something.
Let's talk about why you're not going to do that after this conversation.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's a lot more important.
Let's talk about why you haven't already
done the thing that there exists a seemingly infinite amount of resources for free out there to teach you how to do that thing.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that.
Yeah.
Let's get you out of your own way to even address the technique in the first place. Because there's something keeping you from starting that or finishing it or sustaining working on it. That's the thing I'm interested in. And, there's a ton. It would be stupid to get into that field almost, like considering that. It's almost like, okay, you got an internet connection? All right, so we've already established. I don't know how stupid it is, but for me, I can't reconcile it. I can't justify.
I just mean there's a stupid amount of information out there.
Right? No, I agree with you. I'm just saying, like, I can't justify just creating, like, spending time talking to people, holding their hand, saying, all right, now you put this here and you put that there.
Right.
For weeks at a time, for months at a time. It doesn't make sense to me because that's not the real issue. It's just like those weight loss shows where you got people who are morbidly obese. Calories in, calories out is it.
That is it.
That's it.
I'm living proof of that.
Same.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
Everyone is living proof of that.
Well, all I mean is that I lost 200 pounds by just, people always ask me like, so how'd you do it, man? I'm
Yeah,
like,
right.
well, I ate less.
Yeah, but that's my point. Is like, I totally got the reference. 'Cause I know about your journey on that. But everyone's living proof of that.
Yeah.
For better or worse.
Yeah.
Or for indifference.
It's called the second law of thermodynamics.
Calories in, calories out. That's it. It's simple. It's simple. It's super simple. Super simple. Just like every other technique is super
And no, you're
simple.
not different. No, you're not special. No, you don't have a weak metabolism. No, you're not a snowflake.
Some people do, but it still comes down to calories in,
disagree.
calories out. No, not even discipline. Calories in, calories out.
Oh, no, I said disagree.
Oh, disagree. No, I believe that there's some people that have have special circumstances, like for example, like medications that. That.
I mean, like pending that you don't have some condition that is known.
Right. That's what I'm saying. Like there are people.
Yeah.
There are other factors at
like
play.
you don't have a thyroid issue. Okay, well then we know that your body behaves in the same way.
Right. There are other things at play. However, it always comes back down to that, and it always comes back down to that for weight loss. So when you have these people on
there's
on
like
shows,
300,000 books on just one tiny little aspect of it,
right?
And none of them have the words calories in, calories out, and nothing else in it.
Well, I would say none of them, but yeah, some of them often ignore that simple fact. But you see these shows where it's a transformation show like that, where you got somebody morbidly obese, and why is this simple thing holding them up? It's not.
Yeah.
There's some sort of trauma in the way, right? Like we discussed, there's some sort of thing, and like I put it, there's some sort of thing that they're practicing that is a counter skill to the skill they say they want to have, which is losing weight.
Yeah.
And it always comes back to diving deeper into what is surrounding the process that's keeping you from it.
Dude, I've had trouble. So I've volleyed between 250 and 190 since I went down from 400.
Okay. How tall are you?
6'1", about 6'2", maybe. 6'1", probably. Yeah. So I should be around
I'm
like
6'2". I think we're
average weight for a male my size is usually around like 180, 190. So that's what.
When I lost all that weight a couple years ago, like I got down to like 180. Something.
Yeah, exactly. I got there too, man. And
Now.
at Stasis, because of my childhood traumas, my father was kind of absent. Like he's in the house, just absent. And I would go back and forth from the living room to the kitchen, back to the living room,
Sure.
biding time.
Sure.
And it was always fully stocked, right? So I ended up pretty big. At Stasis, that's who I am. I'm super good at it because I practiced it a lot. Mm-hmm. And it is. If I want to lose weight, which I'm in the process of right now, I literally have to just practice remembering and little things. Like if I write down what I'm going to eat today, it's harder to stray from it. So I'm practicing eating less. If I limit myself in terms of trips to the kitchen when I'm home, or if I recognize the times at which I typically will overeat, I'm practicing that skill. At Stasis, I'm too well practiced in the other direction.
Sure.
It's not going to just happen.
Right.
Just because I want it to.
Right.
Yeah.
It's like you don't just dunk a basketball because you want to.
Right.
It takes some practice.
Yeah.
Unless you're naturally gifted towards that. But even that natural gift comes from some sort of, conditional thing that led you to that, So that's one of the reasons why I address these things in a much, what I call a more well-rounded approach, because I see a ton of inspirational memes and a ton of people being inspired by them, and that's it. It's like, how do you put that inspirational meme into practice and sustain practicing it for as long as you'd ever like to?
Yeah.
And there's answers to that. They aren't loudly shouted about, and that's what my interest
And
is.
they don't fit into a neat little blurb sometimes, unless you have one of these eureka moments.
You know what? Just yet. I just think I think every great saying is just a few words from a better one.
Yeah,
and I think the additional word to that is yet.
Yeah.
You know, like I think that they will exist and do exist to some degree in some sort of blurb form, right? That everyone will at some point look at and be like, yes. And that's the normalization that I'm looking to increase. I'm looking to normalize these ideas that I think, that I know, as much as I can know, something like this, are in everyone's best interest based upon what they want. Based upon the universal things that I think most people want. And certainly all the people that I encounter that are looking for guidance in these particular areas want.
Is that
it
something
would be
you
in their
would,
best interest to normalize these things. It would be my best interest to normalize these things, because something I realized many years ago, I can say that now, and which is why I can accept a compliment and those things and properly put it in its place, not necessarily to me, but to the things that I choose to represent, right? I used to think that I wanted to be great, but I just want to represent greatness. If there's a stock on greatness, I want to represent it. You know, and I want to do all the things to get out of my own way.
kind of frees yourself from jealousy of others' greatness to think about it that way.
It helps.
Yeah.
Increases the likelihood if you practice. You know, there's still those reflexes that come up.
Yeah.
But it really comes down to, I want to increase the stock on greatness. I want to increase the stock on emotional intelligence. I want to increase the stock on what emotional intelligence means accurately. I want to increase in stock on intuitive literacy, creative literacy, right? The ability to properly and accurately hear and interpret your creative and or intuitive voice. I want these stocks to be raised because I have vested interest in them. I am invested in them. And the more people that invested in those, the more normalized it becomes and the more rich we become in those areas. If we're rich in those areas, well then shoot, man, like I can go out and completely be myself and get paid for it.
Right.
You understand? When it comes down to me understanding, look, like we said, I'll bring it right back around. We talked about this bubble that Soliloquists created so many years ago, right? For us. We created this bubble for us and all the people that were kind of close and around. And that bubble was the closest thing I can think of to utopia that I could imagine. And it's like
where it was okay to be exactly what you are.
Yes,
Yeah.
and encourage it and fight for it. And even fight each other for it. Like when the behaviors came out that would be killing our true selves, we would fight each other, you know, argument wise and stuff like that. You know, like we've never gotten physical. Well, no, Swamp.
Alex would just punch you right in the face.
No. What's funny is like one time, like in the middle of an argument, I jumped up and hugged Swam really hard and started kissing him really hard. So like, because I mean, that's the type of thing that exists in our bubble.
That's
like,
that's the part.
I was angry. I was doing it out of anger.
It's crazy wisdom. It's,
Yeah.
It's zen, it's a lot of zen.
We created a sort of like biosphere of practicing how to live exactly the way we want to. And through those years of doing that, you know, almost 2 decades of doing that with such brilliant people involved, and encouraging each other and fighting for each other and fighting each other for each other.
Right.
And allowing that.
Yeah.
You know, I'll forever be rich in so many areas of my life because of that.
Yeah.
And because those things have been developed to a degree where I can say, wow, we gave this a chance and look, it really, really, really works.
You want to kind of grow the bubble?
Yeah.
Yeah. You want the whole world to be the bubble.
Yeah.
You're a maniac.
I mean. That's what I mean by normalize it.
Yeah.
I want to normalize these things because why wouldn't you? If you saw it worked, why wouldn't you want to see it work for other people? It just raises the stock on it, you know? And what I also found is being a pioneer in a certain regard, an adventurous creative in another regard, you know, some of these other things, and then going out into the world and trying to share it with people, there wasn't a lot of literacy for what I was presenting.
Right. It's hard for me to describe to people that, like, when I go and hang out
Because there
at
exists no textbook for it.
Right. When I go to Solilla Manor and I come out and I'm just like buzzing, you know, and it's just like, I can't really tell you what it is. It's just like these people are tuned into something. You know what I mean?
Into the very thing that you are tuned in yourself. But we've spent the greater part.
You practiced it a fair amount.
We practiced it hard.
Yeah.
We practiced formalizing it into steps, into blurbs.
Yeah.
You know,
making it easier for others to enter the bubble.
Yes.
By creating this on-ramp into it. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So it's like,
you guys converted Skip. Skip was a was a country Christian boy.
Man, and you know what's funny about it is like, look, I'm not blind to things outside of the bubble. You know, I feel very privileged to have experienced what I have and to be raised by my parents who are amazing people, both. You know, and also the fact that my mother's was so abused in so many different ways. You know, I'm not thankful for her plight for that, but I'm thankful that she survived to teach me. You know, and I'm not just talking about all the good things she taught me. You know, I'm talking about the way she treated herself in front of me. Right. You know, because you learn those things too. She taught me directly how to, really follow myself and be a great person. But
well, sometimes your parents spar with themselves so you can see the holes.
Hey, look, a lot of women, prior generations, a lot of women, period, have been abused in some sort of way. And she, man, I can't believe some of the things she's been through. And I learned all about victimhood from her. And even to a point of literal place where I realized like I was acting like a victim at some point and I had no justifiable reason why. It's just because I learned the skill from her.
Right.
Not because she taught it to me, but she was doing it in front of me.
Right.
And she learned it because she was actually a victim. I learned it because I saw a victim. And
right.
But what's great about all my experiences in the world is that I've been essentially vaccinated to mental illness.
Yeah.
Well, a better word, I've been immunized to mental illness.
Same thing happened to me, where like a lot of people that are in my life have some degree or another of mental illness, and I just don't. Like hereditarily, I should.
When it's practiced in a controlled environment, you can be immunized to it. And, in the same right, like, if you want to talk about like personal versions of hell that come from mental illness and depression and all these things that aren't rectified. I'm not saying depression is ultimately a bad thing, but I'm a great problem solver, and I used to define myself by by how many problems I had, which can be dangerous in itself.
Samesies.
Yeah, right. Twinsies. And it would get down to a point where I once said, I think to Alex, I said, oh yeah, I love being in hell, because I'm really good at it. And she's like, no, you don't.
That's the Boston condition, is to glorify or glamorize it.
But the thing when she said that, I was like, oh, you're completely right. I don't love that.
Yeah.
I love getting out.
Yeah.
I love being able to get out of hell, because yes, I've been immunized to mental illness, to hellish states, to low states. But you can't have anti-venom without venom, right? But you don't fall in love with the venom for it. You fall in love with the ability to create the anti-venom. And for me, I realize that I'm more in love with the fact that I can get out of hell. And
There's
I know
a
the way
source
out.
of active utility for you.
It is. And I love that I can get out. I'm a cartographer of escape routes for hell. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I can make maps out, and I have. And I like sharing those maps because the more people that are in hell, the harder it is to get out, Yeah. It makes it more difficult because if everyone else around you is in hell, or the majority are, or seems like it, well, then you feel the flames too. Yeah. So when it comes down to it, like I'm very interested in if I found a way, not the way, but a way or a couple ways, I want to share as many of those as possible so we can compare notes.
Right.
You know what I mean? If you have a better way, please tell me,
So what I do. No.
Right. So that we can normalize the route to which we gain our personal freedom and feeling of where we would like to be, right? that's in everyone's best interest. It's a very selfish goal for me too, because at the end of the day, I really want to see that so that I can completely just be this person that I've practiced to be and it be popular.
And there's also no distortion. Like every time you meet resistance with being you, you have to literally spend time not being you. Whether you're hiding yourself or you're just trying to navigate this momentary conflict that's arisen.
Right.
You're not getting to be the just like unabashedly, yourself. It just ruins it. It's like when someone wants you to explain a joke. No.
Right. Well, it certainly creates something else.
Yeah.
It doesn't create the, laughter doesn't happen. It turns into something else.
But it's a flow state.
Yeah.
And any interruption of it, no matter how momentary, is devastating to the state.
It is.
Yeah.
Inertia.
Like people say, it's not such a big deal. It's like, no, it is. It is a big deal.
It's a huge deal.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, in its own microcosmic.
In that context.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Actual.
Yeah, like especially in a new environment or like you're out in unfamiliar circumstances. Anytime that you have to disrupt your you-ness and your comfort and your familial like atmosphere, especially the soliloquist bubble, like if that gets perturbed out and about, like that's a major disruption to something that brings a lot of joy and well-being.
Sure, it can be disruptive, and disruption doesn't always have to be bad, because if you're looking to expand, there's a cost to that. That.
Yeah.
Things have to be scalable, right? And the expansion of the bubble must be scalable too. And you'll learn how to do that with more disruption that you encounter if you learn from it.
Yeah, you build thicker walls.
Right,
Yeah.
right. So what's great about this is I don't really see a lot of disruption. The ratio of disruption to success is very low.
Yeah.
It's a much higher ratio of success when these things get
because people
shared.
want to be in the bubble. Generally, like when I like literally, it's a type of high. Like hanging out with Swam or hanging out with you. It's like you guys are talking about stuff that to other people does not seem.
But you're already in the bubble, my friend. Or if not, so what? Here's the issue is like, if you're turned upside down, you think up is down, right? And like, if you try to uplift somebody who feels turned upside down, they feel like you're grounding them into the ground. There's a certain amount of...
That's a bit. It's fully a bit.
It absolutely is.
Yeah.
I didn't just come up with it.
Right.
That's tried and tested.
Yeah.
Researched and
this
proven.
This is my material. Yeah.
I mean, look, I've been doing this stuff for years.
Yeah.
To be able to come up with multiple angles of expression to deliver it that it makes sense.
Well, you know what I've found, to put that in another way, is that people become very possessive of non-working solutions to their plights. Mm-hmm. So they will have something that kind of helps them get by with this massive problem that they have in their cognition. And then you'll be like, hey, put that down. Let's actually help you get by. And they're like, no, this is all we've got. This is the lifeboat.
It comes from a place of lack rather than a place of abundance. And
yeah.
It also comes from the fact that there's so many sins being committed, inaccuracies being committed all the time that almost hit the mark. So
it's good enough.
So they say. If you're constantly almost hitting the mark by going like this, anytime I go like this, you're going to think I'm going to be hitting that same place. The problem also exists that a lot of the ways to the solution incorporate some of the things that you have already been proven as bad. What I mean by that is it's as simple as, look, there's a pane of glass behind me. Or between us. And I'm like that. What's that look like to you?
This is like you're going to hit me.
It looks like I'm going to hit you.
Yeah.
And why does it look like because the only time you've seen that is when somebody's trying to hit you.
It happens all the time where someone will be frustrated with something and you're like, here, let me. And they're like, no, I've tried that.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Exactly.
Oh, that does work.
Exactly.
That happens so much so that I don't have to describe
And
that to you.
it's a shame because often, like I said, without the venom, there's no anti-venom. But it's about how you handle it. You know, if somebody's constantly been like grabbed at, you know, improperly. If I go to hug you, a gesture of love, you know what I mean?
You're gonna resist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Because the same motions it takes to mess it up often occur in the solution as well.
Yeah.
So it takes a lot of patience. It takes a lot of patience. It takes a lot of understanding that there aren't really any bad guys. There's just bad behavior. And really that there aren't any bad or good people either. There's just good behavior. You know, like it takes a certain level of empathy, a certain level of patience, a certain cocktail of things that I personally, by the certain things that have happened in my life to create that cocktail, have been immunized to. And
I think that I was going to bring this up earlier in the conversation is that like I don't think good or bad are useful terms either.
Sometimes
they just don't appear to be. There's actually a Buddhist proverb: "Who knows what's good or bad."
Exactly.
Who knows what's
Who
good
knows?
or bad? And the guy horse wanders onto this horse farmer's property, and his neighbor's like, "You got a stallion for free," and he's like, "Who knows what's good or bad?" And then his son's playing with the stallion, and he falls off and breaks his ankle, and he's like, "Oh, you were right," and he's like, "Who knows what's good or bad?"
And then
it goes on. And
it goes on, and he
keeps going good and
being
bad.
Enlisted in the army to go fight for war, but
Exactly.
he can't.
And he's like,
injured.
"Oh, what a blessing!" He's like, "Who knows?"
I heard a similar version where it's like, "We'll see."
We'll see. That was in Charlie Wilson's War. It was told that way.
Okay, yeah, so
Philip
we'll
Seymour
see.
Hoffman says, "We'll see."
Yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, and that's exactly what it is. It's like, usually,
Which is funny. I just got introduced to that proverb a year half
amazing.
year ago, 6 months ago, because somebody like said, "Oh, you must know that," because like I find myself like practicing those things just because they're kind of logical when you search for them.
Yeah.
And you get down to it. And he's like, "Oh, you must be familiar." I'm like, "No, I don't." And he's like, "Oh, yeah, it's exactly how your
Chinua Achebe. Have you ever read Things Fall Apart? It's like mandatory reading in most high schools. It's why we say yams to celebrate something. But anyways, there's a proverb in there because the Igbo tribe, like West Africans, very into their proverbs, and a proverb that goes, "Proverbs are the palm oil with which words are eaten or thoughts are eaten."
Sure.
It's like helps it go down.
Yeah.
Helps you understand.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. But yeah, so like good, bad, worry, excitement, to me, useless. Like if it's good, then what? If it's bad, then what?
Then what?
How does it help you? Worry is just like you're just lying. You don't know that it's going to turn out the way that you're worried about, or you don't know it's going to turn out the way you're excited about.
Worry is very useless.
Yes, but I think equally excitement is useless because it's like you're just setting yourself up for a distortion of reality. Like you want it to be that thing. Yeah. What if it's not? What are you going to do? What then?
Anticipatory excitement isn't so useful. Excitement,
momentary excitement, like this great. Happened. I'm excited. Ooh, like excitement. Joy is what I would call that. Yeah. But yeah, like they just seem useless because they set you up for a distortion of reality. You don't know that it's good. You don't know that it's bad. You don't know that it will be bad.
Right.
So that's why
you got to always prove your simulator wrong.
Yeah. Don't run the simulation.
With tangible, well, you're going to run the simulation.
You're going to, yeah.
You're going to.
Try not to. Practice not.
No. Practice looking at the simulation for what it is, a simulation. Because you do that anyway. You know what I mean? Like
like it's part of your autonomous nervous system.
If you try to control the thing that comes naturally, you're going to set yourself up for a lot of shame or a lot of hurt or a lot of something. And that's one of the things I do in my sessions too. Like anything that you're feeling, I don't take for granted. I think that it's there for a reason. You're doing it for a reason. It's just you might not be interpreting that reason properly. You might be misreading the nudge, as I call it.
Yeah.
And I think the nudge is sound. I just think maybe your ability to interpret that nudge in which direction it's pushing you might be a little bit off, which is all it takes.
Yeah.
And in my sessions with people, that's what I'm doing. I'm being a real-time version of accountability and practice, and a sparring partner for you to practice these things that, based upon what you want, would be in your best interest.
I frequently find myself in the position of having to help someone either navigate a momentary inconvenience or problem, or like that's mostly it. And people freak out as soon as there's any phenomena like that worries them or makes them excited. Either one, which is why I end up thinking that it's useless. But that's the automatic thing people do is like lose They immediately throw out the window everything that they had going for them to navigate out of a problem.
Yeah.
And then they'll like ask me for help, and I'll be like, all right, first calm down. And they're like, no, what do you mean? I'll be like, okay, I can't help you. But like first you have to get sound mind back, Otherwise, like you're just gonna ruin it worse.
Right.
But like it seems to me that you're helping creative people. Primarily?
My definition of creative.
Okay, right.
Everybody.
I've
had entrepreneurs and CEOs of companies. And
I would wager that that's a form of creativity.
I mean, it is.
But more than tangentially.
Sure. People who, already feel like they got to figure it out and just want someone to talk to more about it.
Yeah.
Because one of the greatest things that I find with raising the stock on greatness in whatever endeavor, creative or otherwise, that people fear is being alone. They feel like the more that they advance on the path to that, the fewer people will be around. And in some cases, it's true. At least the people that are currently around. And some people just want to know that other people are on the same tip,
Yeah.
And like want to have tangible conversations about it, about their own path to where they deem great.
Yeah, like for people who are already at that level, it's less of
I've had a few of those, yeah.
It's less of a coach and more of a compadre, right? Like you're just sort of like there to be the sounding board at a kind of like...
Yeah, they want to, because one skill that is universally practiced is to deem external interest or worth to be of some sort of value, whether over internal worth or in addition to, at least, right? So we want to see other people giving credit to the things that we give credit to.
Right. We needed validation.
We want it.
Yeah.
And, that might be one of the things that we do need.
Yeah.
Maybe it is. I can't prove it.
Yeah.
But we certainly want it like a motherfucker. Like we want that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And a lot of things stem from that. A lot of...
Because you worried you might be wrong that you're tight. That's my worry. Like I want someone to look at it and be like, that's tight, so that I'm not like fooling myself that it's tight.
Sure. And that's where that self-mistrust comes from, because we're taught to question ourselves all the time, not to check in with ourselves. And there's a difference.
Yeah.
And checking in with yourself is a practice of building self-trust and giving credit to what you want and your intuitive guidance. Questioning yourself is the direct opposite. Questioning yourself is, do I have what it takes? Am I good enough? This, that, the other thing, blah, 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 blah. So many versions of questioning yourself.
Checking in with yourself is when, like, for instance, I've been learning a lot recently about biopsychosocial model of pain and really just abandoning pain as whenever I feel pain, I'm just like momentary or an output of the brain. It's not real. If I don't pay attention to it or if I diminish it, it'll probably get better. And that's been the case.
No, you increase the likelihood.
That I'll feel the pain?
No, that it'll get better.
And yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's like if I just put it out of my mind, because it is an output of the brain. I could classify that as me not trusting my initial reaction or like surface level kind of experience, I guess.
You could.
What I mean is that people lie to themselves constantly. Like science has proven out that like we're really good at self delusion.
Yeah.
We're super good at it.
Right.
So how do you combat
Powerful
that
skill.
while also trusting yourself?
Well, like I was saying, there's a million ways to question yourself, but there's only really one way to check in with yourself. And I think a lot of people are misreading the nudge to check in with themselves and therefore interpreting it as questioning themselves with whatever way that manifests, whichever question that manifests.
Yeah.
So there's a ton of ways to question yourself, but there's only one way to check in with yourself. And checking in with yourself is one question, which is, now that I'm here, what do I want now?
Yeah.
Now that I'm here, what do I want now? And I sandwich that between two nows to emphasize being in the moment.
That's so good, because when I think about questioning yourself, I think about worry. Yeah. I think about, oh shit, I've been operating with this assumption for a month and that might not be true. So what are the consequences? How does that unfold? It's all immediately worry or excitement.
Right.
Yeah.
And then people are like, well, they defend questioning themselves because they think it's the way that they get better, the way that they keep themselves in check.
Or they're
When in
preserving
fact-
the fallacy that they had before they realized they needed to question themselves.
When in fact they want to defend checking in with themselves. That's how you really keep yourself in check. Right?
Yes.
That's the thing that's the danger. When things are not wholly inaccurate, but partially inaccurate, it's even more dangerous. Because when things are partially inaccurate, there's a shred of truth to it. And if you find that thing that's partially inaccurate to be not helpful, well, then you throw the baby out with the bathwater. And then you throw out even the good part of what you were doing. And the good part of what you're doing was the nudge to check in with yourself. You just misinterpreted it to question yourself, because that's what you were taught to practice.
Right.
We're very skilled at questioning ourselves. But checking in with yourself is a dark art.
Yeah.
It's a mystic thing that doesn't get shouted about often, you know? Yet this other thing gets reinforced constantly and very loudly at that. So what it comes down to is start asking yourself now, just like replacing should with want. Now that I'm here, what do I want now?
That's like
And
a device that you've
Absolutely
developed to help.
Another thing. Yeah. That's part of the sustainable practice
That's
method.
some badass technology, man.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's fantastic.
Now that I'm
It's very-
here, what do I want now?
Yeah.
I'm going to remember that.
Good.
So, okay, so.
You got it on tape,
Yeah, exactly.
quote unquote tape.
Yeah, well, I'll try to remember it operationally. You
But
know?
what's the byproduct of that? You start, again, it's a practice that has a side effect of learning how to trust
It's
yourself.
the same
more.
as.
Same as
It's
the
the
should
same
one.
as. Now what? What then? It's
Yeah,
like
we'll
you
see.
still.
Yeah.
You're still
Yeah.
back here where you have to figure out what now.
Well, but also like where you're focusing on not what you have to do, but what you want to do, right? And if you're, and the key to that too is,
I lose sight of that for days.
and it's fine to lose sight of it, but it's
Yeah.
also fine to like completely renege on what you said you wanted to do 5 minutes ago. Again, now that
Give
you're
yourself
here,
the permission
Give yourself
to change
permission.
your mind.
now that you're here, what do you want to do now? You set up Indepreneur, you set up this whole video thing. You would deem it a failure to like completely throw that away. On some level, you would, because that's what you've been practiced to do. That's
Yeah.
what you've been taught to practice the skill of deeming it as. But
Right.
it's completely fine, because now that you're here, based upon what this has brought you, now what do you want to do? Because
Right.
this might have just been a step towards that other thing.
I mean, it is.
Yet it's
has
a
to
bad
be.
thing to flip-flop.
Either you die doing it,
Yeah.
or it's a step.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think that's a good thing to clarify. It is like, if it's a failure, if you stop doing it now, when can you stop doing it and it's not a failure? What's the arbitrary where are you going? Like, you know what I mean?
what do you want?
Yeah.
You know?
Exactly. Yeah,
You
yeah.
know? And that becomes hairy because like it's an unpracticed skill or a largely unpromoted skill. So people then start to feel lost, like, well, I feel like that's scary because I will just quit everything all the time and I'll never get anything done. And, you know, like, well, I don't think you will if you consider the whole of what you want.
We talked about this the last episode.
Right.
We did.
Yeah.
We went over it. Where he's like,
It's still true.
yeah, like, yeah, totally. Yeah. You have to consider.
There's a package deal that you pay for with your wants.
Yeah.
You have to consider the whole of it.
Yeah.
know?
And it's like, if you're quitting things all the time and that's not something that
That's
you
not
like,
the whole of what you want.
that's not what you want.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. 100%, dude. Okay.
All right.
So this
So,
will literally go on for 10 hours. If we're at 2 hours recording time. I have to somehow chop this down to like, I don't actually have to chop it down.
You don't have to chop down anything. You
probably
put the
won't.
whole thing out there.
Yeah.
You could make it 3 episodes.
We'll splice it. We'll split it up, put it on YouTube in a bunch of different iterations.
Absolutely. The best way to do it. Now we have many
best.
things from one.
Chunking down. This guy's doing the $1.80 Gary Vee strategy.
Sure.
You know? So I want to kind of so hard to neatly wrap up kind of Studio Sensei, but like ultimately what you're trying to provide, as I understand it, is
Yeah, you sum it up. That's what I like to hear.
dude. When I
bring
walk
out the
into
Boston.
when
Come
I
on,
walk
give it
into
to me.
Solilla Manor and I talk to Swam or I talk to DiViNCi or I talk to Alex or I talk to anyone in that house, it's like I come out and I'm like, man, I forgot all these things that I know. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't want to do that again. I don't want to forget again. And it seems like you're able to provide a piece of that in a more structured format that moves people towards a certain want.
Everything in my life at this point, I'm very grateful for my life. You know, there's some things that obviously things that I want to be better and things like that, and things where I would have, you know, wished something else to happen. Of course, but for everything, I'm super, super grateful of how rich I am in every aspect. And I'm not really even talking about financially, but I'm very grateful for it. And I realize that I've been spoiled in experience of such and in the best way, in such fantastic ways that it means nothing to me if it's not formalized and shareable, right? In a way that can be consistently shared. So that's what Studio Sensei is for me. It's my way to formalize these things. That's what the sustainable method is. The sustainable practice method is a way to make these things able to be normalized, right?
Yeah.
In a way that I wish they were normalized for me,
Right.
because I'm very interested to see what happens from that place,
Right.
right? What problems do we get to encounter then?
Yeah.
You know, beautiful ones, I'm sure.
Yeah, man. It's like you're. I think about the danger of if you had never ended up with the group of people you ended up with, and I think about like you're kind of just like lessening the danger of that happening. You know what I mean? You're like, oh man, what if I never had this life?
It would be a crime for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah.
And but you know, like things happen the way that we ultimately practice them to happen, and I'm thankful for being set off on the right foot with martial arts and my parents and all the things that converged into the unique cocktail that is my life. And what really gets me psyched is the fact that, you know, if I were looking for external validation for these things to see how special that they are, which at the core I'm not, but it doesn't hurt. Every single time I do these sessions with people, it feels like magic. You know, it feels like, holy shit, the world is amazing.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, because I get proven time and time again that these are things that, when shared, they work.
Yeah.
You know, and work in the manner of of giving something beyond hope, because I'm not crazy about hope. I don't think it's a sustainable fuel. I think there's something a lot more practical and sustainable in knowing where you're going.
Yeah.
You know?
All right. Switch cameras so that we can catch the end of this. But now they can see the reflector in the back.
That's fine.
The Hollywood magic has
Key it
disappeared.
out, make it like a big Pikachu or something.
Yeah. But so
put Tony Robbins sitting there like this. Like, yeah.
Yeah. Well,
Makes sense.
I've invited DiViNCi to use Entrepreneur HQ as he wishes, because I want to see. I just would love to just be able to put on your podcast every morning.
I think today we became partners in some sort of way.
Something.
Some sort of way.
Something's going on.
I think today marked, even before, I think it marked some sort of convergence of our services.
Yeah.
And I think that's awesome.
Yeah.
I'm psyched for it.
Hell yeah, man. Well, it's how do people find Studio Sensei? How does it work?
StudioSensei.com.
Okay.
Just make sure you're spelling it right.
Right.
It's not soliloquist. It's not that hard
It's not
to spell.
Right.
And we spell soliloquist intentionally wrong, which
yeah. You guys are great at SEO.
Hey, we were ahead of the time.
Yeah.
Before all these other people were making it hard to Google search you.
Yeah.
We were the first ones.
Yeah.
We were some of the first. So Studio Sensei,
SENSEI.
That's right.
Yeah.
StudioSensei.com. And currently I'm offering a free session.
Just for our listeners?
That's correct.
Only?
Yes.
Yes. See, I knew there was a reason you listen to this podcast.
So go to StudioSensei.com and there it'll be very apparent where you click to get that.
Hey man, you've been listening to what we do. Because I've been doing this YouTube series where I just audit major record label artists' websites. And I'm like, so before we look at this, just know that the most money a musician makes from a visit is when you buy a hoodie or something.
Right.
Because they have all the margin on that.
Right.
Let's go. And it's Spotify, YouTube, go back to Instagram,
Right.
Yeah. But
right.
Listen, get a free consultation. That's about it.
Yeah. It's a good website. It's clean.
Yeah, it is. It's nice.
But which is good because like I said, I'm all about taking all these things and making them more tangible.
Yeah.
And I think to make them tangible on a well executed level is important, because a lot of these things have been tried to be shouted about before for history. I'm not an inventor of these ideas.
I've tried to go at it the other way. I've tried to cure people's lack of, proficiency in certain areas just by teaching them those areas.
Right.
And a lot of the people in our community, it's I've given you everything you need to learn it.
Right.
There's something else.
There's something else.
Yeah.
There's something else. So I think that's something else, that intangible thing is worth shouting about in an accurate and clean way.
Yeah.
It's one that helps it go down.
Yeah. It's the palm oil.
That palm
Dude,
oil.
let's grow the bubble. Hell yeah.
Let's do it.
Thank you so much for being on Creative Juice a third time, good sir. Hell yeah. And it won't be so long next time.
No.
Yeah.
Let's do it often.
Let's do it often. Yeah. Hell yeah. Thank you so much for listening, everyone.